Sketchbooks are the most amazing things for an artist. I'm going to show you today something that I do in my sketchbook other than sketching that is a tremendous help to my artwork, and I believe it will help you too. So come on with me, we'll get some paints and I'll show you what I'm doing. These are the three brushes I'll be using today to create a value study. These value studies are incredibly helpful and important for setting up your artwork or your painting. I teach this to my in-person students, if you like, the students I engage with, face to face, and it helps understand the breakdown of paintings and simplifies things for them. I have this as a practice myself. I try to be more disciplined with my own work and do this more. Early days at college, we were encouraged to do thumbnail sketches, and I didn't even appreciate back then the value of that. This is a step further than thumbnails. Thumbnail sketches are something I'll go into another time, but this is a little bit more in-depth study of the reference that you're working from. Obviously I'm working from a photo here. I've used a very complex subject of something I'm working on to show you, because I figured if it was too simple it might not be too advanced for those who are further along in their painting journey, but it's also something that is complex enough that if you're just starting out, it will give you all the answers and you'll be able to go back to it at a later date and glean more and more from it. The paint I'm using today is gouache, but this can be done in any medium. If it's done in a sketchbook, it needs to be a water medium rather than an oil medium, unless it is primed. So I'm working in a A3 sketchbook, which is quite large and not that portable, but this is my studio sketchbook that I use to plan out paintings. As I said, it's not a practice that I was always adopting, but more and more as I have journeyed in my art, I've realized the importance of stepping back, taking your time and considering what you're painting, as you don't have time to paint everything, and throwing spaghetti at the wall is sometimes a waste of time. So I like to plan exactly what I'm doing so I preserve my time in the studio and the time that I have to paint for the most valuable things to grow me as an artist and to create the strongest works that I can. Gouache or even casein paint is a great medium for doing studies. They can be a standalone medium for final works, but they are fantastic for studies. They dry quickly, they have flexibility of being able to blend a little and not dry and set and have to overlay constantly to build the painting. You could have a little bit of time to blend. Yeah, they're readily available and easy to set up, clean up, the whole lot. So initially I sketch up my subject first. So before I start the gouache, I start with a sketch. I have a video on this process, quite an in-depth video on planning a painting using a couple of references and sketching it up with the composition in mind and the pattern in mind to make a really strong painting, and you can see that on my channel. I'll put the link below. So I have done that with this first, and having the preliminary sketch in front of me makes it very quick to draw up again the little painting and launch straight into the values or the tones straight away. By values and tones, I mean how light and how dark the parts of the painting are. So I start with a 3-value sketch, which is my darkest darks, my lightest lights, and the in-between tones or values. So I start with that. So painting it up, you're able to launch into the broadest shapes first and establish them quicker than you could if you didn't have that sketch in front of you. I want to take a moment to return to the brushes, because these brushes are my favorites for doing the sketches. So the one I'm using right now is an angle brush. It's very thin in its width, but it's quite broad, so I'm able to apply the broad shapes and fill in very quickly the paint, or even add lines. So you can see me filling that in very easily with the broad part of the brush, but I can also come back and use the thin part to create the lines. So you can see it's quite a handy shape to have. So some brushes are the flat chisel shape, but they're quite thick. These brushes are quite thin. They're not expensive brushes. I don't find that expensive brushes are necessary all the time. There's some times where you really do need to spend a lot of money for a brush, but this little set that I have, I find very handy. Now I want to explain why this process is so important for painting, or it is for me, and I'll explain why I have adopted it more often now. The reason why I love it so much is that when I do a painting, I prefer my paintings to have a hand-painted look. I want the viewer to look at the paintings and know that somebody has created it, that it's not a photograph or looks like a photograph. I enjoy the fact that the brush marks can make it a more tangible experience for the viewer, that they see the brush strokes and they feel like they are part of the making of the painting. They're able to enjoy the process as well as the finished results. So I love to see the mark making in artwork. I love to see the texture, the direction and the energy behind it. And so I try to provide that for my viewer. So that being said, I lean towards a impressionist style. In this, I need to have more discipline in what I put down and what I don't put down. So these tonal paintings help me establish what is valuable in the composition and in the painting, what my focal point is going to be, and what elements need to stay and what elements need to go. So as I'm painting this, I'll probably paint in things that I think I need, but because it's small, I can kind of get back from the artwork and be able to assess if that's really important or not. And because I'm working small and in a water-based medium, it's very quick to change those things and make those decisions small scale. Also, because you're working in a sketchbook, you're less rigid about keeping those things. You're not thinking this is the painting, and you're less precious about deleting things or adding things, because it's not taking a lot of your time in comparison, although this does help the time on your final works because it eliminates all of that thinking process. You're able to launch straight into the valuable elements and what you want to do. It takes the onus off being a masterpiece, if you like. So in a sketchbook, you give yourself permission to make mistakes. Well, I do. It's not about having this amazing thing to show on Instagram. It's about me nutting out what I'm doing and learning and growing and playing and experimenting and enjoying the process. And to be honest with you, I love my sketchbook work. I really enjoy the time in it, and sometimes that is enough. I don't even go on to do all of these and finish painting them as final pieces. I enjoy the process enough and feel satisfied and leave it at that. But there are times that I want to take something into a painting and keep the process going, and that's why I do these. So working the little details, putting them in, taking them out, and deciding which ones need to be in there to explain the three-dimensional visual story is so much simpler doing it this way first. Now I'm trying to include everything I can think of that you may be asking yourself as you watch this. I will speed up the film soon so that you can watch it in fast forward or a little bit faster, and you can sit back and just watch it. But while I'm chatting to you, I will tell you everything I can think of that you might ask. But if you have any questions, I would love to read them in the comments and be able to respond to you. Perhaps even I could create something else to show you that you may be interested in. So leave those comments. Make sure that you comment below. I love to engage with those who are watching and help you if I can. One of the questions that is often asked in any demonstration that I do at an art society or classes is always around the materials. So I will step back and go there. The sketchbook I'm using, as I said, it's a large A3 size sketchbook. It's a hardbound sketchbook. It is not an expensive sketchbook. It's just a cheap one. And it is full of fairly thick cartridge paper. So it's made for drawing. It responds very well to the paint. It's quite absorbent, so the paint goes into the paper quite quickly. If you like a less absorbent paper, then you can always put a coat of gesso on it first before you paint. But I actually like the grip of the paper for this. It just gives me lots of playtime with the paint. It's not an expensive thing to have or to acquire. You can pick them up at most places, just the cheap hardbound sketchbooks. I like the hardbound sketchbooks because, I don't know, it's almost like a little published book in the end, and it's solid for longevity, and less likely to fall apart, pages to fall out. And I like to have them all lined up in the bookcase so that I can look back on them. And they are great to look back on and see what you did in the past and have a bit of a giggle. But you do find the little treasures that you go, oh, that's not too bad when you look back in the history. So that's the sketchbook. The brushes have come from different sources. This one I'm using here, I can't even remember where I got it from, but the importance of this brush is mainly just the tip, so that I have got something very sharp to put the little tiny details in. So any little fine brush will do there. The sketchbook is supported by a drawing board stand. It's a Montmartre drawing board stand. I think today I'm using the larger one. I have both sizes and I have them in the studio for the students too. It's able to be adjusted at different heights. So I'm using that, and below me is a towel below my hand. The towel I use to drag the brush on sometimes, or a tissue, just to take the extra water out of the brushes. That is something I have on standby there, and you probably don't see me doing it, but I am doing it in the background. Obviously I have clean water in a container, or the palette that I'm using that is holding the gouache is a food lamington container. To describe it, it's just a very shallow, wide plastic container, and inside that I put a dishcloth that is wet, and not sopping wet but fairly wet, and then I put baking paper over that dishcloth so that it creates a wet palette, and then I place the paint on top of the paper, and it keeps the paint nice and wet during the paint process. And when I seal it up, it keeps it wet for quite a long time. So if I'm not painting for a week or two, I can go back, open it up, and it's fairly dry. If it starts to dry out, I just have a little spray bottle with water in and just give it a little bit of a spray. You can use an additive like retardant medium that slows down the drying time. You can add that to it if you like, but I don't with gouache. I do add that if I'm using acrylic. The paints that I'm using, it doesn't really matter what brand you use for black and white. I wouldn't worry too much about that, but the paint I'm using is just black and white. I'm not using any greys or any in-between tones. It's just black paint and white paint, and I'm mixing it up as I go. So if I've missed anything, just let me know, but you can sit back now and watch the process. Now this is a very important element to remember or to keep in the forefront of your mind when you're painting, is to establish and re-establish the darks. So it's important to establish your darks early on in the painting process, but as you go along it's easy to lose them. So right now that's what I'm doing. I'm re-establishing the darks, and you will have seen leading up to this that all the tones were getting more similar, so therefore the three-dimensional projection wasn't as strong as it is now. So once you re-establish those darks and they go in, it pushes everything else forward, and your lights really stand out and your highlights will stand out more. And also wherever there's a real light in your painting, there's usually a dark beside them, and that makes it really push forward or pop. So look for those areas where there's a strong contrast in your work, and also look for where your highlights are and check just beside them, because they're usually popping because they've got a lower value or tone beside them. So I'll show you a close-up and it front on so you can see it a bit better. It's on a slight angle at the moment, and you'll be able to have a good look at the finished result. But if you enjoyed this video or found any of it value, I would be just absolutely thrilled and appreciate if you could like, subscribe and share my video, and engage with me down the bottom. I am not doing this just for the sake of doing it. I want to be able to help people, and it's really great when I get feedback that tells me I have. So I hope this encourages you to try doing these little tonal studies or giving one a go. Start with something simple at the beginning and something that won't take you a great amount of time. Take the pressure off, give yourself permission to play and enjoy your time, and I would love to know how you go. Come back and let me know how you go and what you found important and useful for yourself, and how that is going to help you moving forward in your growth as an artist. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time and we can paint together. Bye for now.